Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and last night I held my first One Piece OP08.5 tournament, which is the OP08 meta with the inclusion of the Star Decks 15 through 20, which shakes it up quite a bit as well. So honestly, a lot of fun, really happy that we were able to host it. And a couple of things before we go over the results in general. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. It does help a lot and means that you guys are excited for some more 8.5 coverage in the next couple of days as we get it with the big tournaments that we have in the next couple weeks as well. And then also make sure to check out my website Eggman Events, which has all the deck lists from this video and many other tournaments that I've been covering, and will of course be updated with 8.5 as we get again deeper into this meta. And then lastly, thank you to both Human and Risu for being the staff for this event as well. I would not be able to run this event without them. And also you can check out the live stream where Human and I did the commentary for this tournament. It's linked in the description. It's free to watch, and there are some pretty good games. I hope you guys enjoy that as well. But jumping on into this event, so this was held last night, October 29th, 64 players, 6 rounds of Swiss, and again, live stream is linked right here. And of our top 8, we do have 3 Dofis, 1 Smoker, which ended up winning the event, 1 of the Star Deck 13 Luffys, 1 Purple Luffy, 1 Nami, and 1 Enel as well. So generally, I think kind of what we've been seeing and understanding in the sense that we do know that Dofi is pretty present in this meta moving forward. No Rob Lucci in the top 8, which was a little bit interesting as well. Smoker winning the event and you know, overcoming Rob Lucci on the standings, I think is particularly interesting, and just a couple other points from there. And we do have the leader breakdown, so we did have 18 of the Dofis, so doing a little bit better in top 8 compared to the rate of people playing it, but honestly not too terribly better than what it's I see here. We have our Luffy's doing quite good, not a lot of Lucci's, which might have impacted how it did this weekend in general, or for this event in general, and then a bunch of stragglers as well. So this is kind of the data for it. Again, I do recognize that this is a smaller event. This is more of just kind of a snapshot going on into this meta than necessarily a definer for the meta in general. So again, usually I like to run these events as we are going into these new formats, especially since again this is going to be a pretty big weekend for 8.5 as well. So we're going to go over every deck list of the top 8, and then we also do have a couple of unique X2s that we're just using unique leaders that we weren't going over, so we'll go over and talk about those in general. Also, one peculiar thing too, both Finest and Justin had the exact same tiebreakers. So Best Coast pairing says they have 4th and 5th, but it just does alphabetically if the tiebreakers are the same. So we technically have 2 4th placers. I decided to bump up the packs on there too, so we'll talk about it when we get to it, but just an interesting thing that happened for this one. So anyways, jumping on into it, we do have our first place. So this is Nate's version of Smoker, and of the 6 star decks that we got, I think Smoker is definitely in the top half of those ones. I think obviously that Blue Dofi and Purple Luffy are pretty strong. Smoker's right there, and then like Red Nugate's kind of weird because it's good with the cards but not for the leader. But Smoker definitely reads like they've really wanted this deck to be very viable, right? We've already seen the Tashigi, which is just a stupid powerful card. It's a 5/6 that gets removal that also has counter. This is like, you clearly like win depending on how many copies of this card you're able to resolve. It's super good in this deck in general. We do also have the inclusion of the Sengoku, super great for setting up our trash, getting the additional cycle, and just a very good card for us as well. We have the Kobe, which has been an interesting add, but I did see it make some additional plays in this format, which is really cool, and being able to be a definer in some matchups. We have the Hina, which has been more popular lately with the removal of Sakazuki as a leader in this meta. I haven't been seeing Hina as much, so I think it's been a good add as one in Navy card, one that you can cycle with Sengoku pretty easy if you need to, and then being able to bring it back later with like Rebecca and then have like some removal effects too. I think all of that just makes sense and has some great synergies with it, though it is surprising to see it without like Jack out a little bit too, because you don't have like a really great removal unless you already have kind of Brook on board already. And then we do have our top end of like the Gecko Mori as well as the Isho, which this is, I think is a really great matchup definer for Black Yellow Luffy. We can discard it with Sengoku, we can find it with brand new, so no reason to kind of not choose this as one of our top ends for this deck. deck too. So honestly, a pretty safe build, all things considered. I think these are all pretty standard adds for the deck in general. And I think also it goes to show Nate played super well. If you watch any of the matches that we covered, he did a really good job in this tournament. He made some really heads up plays, and I'm not very surprised that he was able to win this one outright. So really cool to see Smoker, one of my favorite decks, and I'm going to be really interested to see if it can perform at a higher level in these next couple weeks as well. But this is Nate's version of the build. Next up, we've got Black Yo Luffy. Again, you guys have probably seen this leader once or twice in the last couple weeks and have your own individual thoughts on it in general. The big things I would say about the list for Caleb, because generally we know what these lists look like right now, is that we're adding the Ace, which is definitely a decision right now, not a staple for the deck. So 2 copies of the 2-drop as well as 2 copies of the 5-drop. And then instead of running the Kuzan, we're playing the Borsalino. So I'd be curious to know the reason why we're playing this in general. My guess is to maybe circumvent like the mirror match perhaps, or additionally like finding that like the Kuzan doesn't get a lot of value. But it's very interesting to see this over the Kuzan in a lot of ways, because I still think Kuzan might be a little bit better in some scenarios, even like a 2-2 split. But it is still a really good blocker. It's something that if you're playing really defensively, you can play it off your Moria for like a value version of the card. And I think it's an interesting ad nonetheless. So other than that, 4 copies of the event, and then just kind of the standard of 4 of each Luffy's and the 4 Sabo to get it done. So this is the build here. Congratulations to Caleb for their finish there. Next up, we've got Purple Luffy. So this is Joshua's version of the deck, getting 3rd place with it. This has been one of my favorite decks with the new star decks, as well as just the engine in general. It's very, very open, and it's been fun to try to explore it with other packages and as well. I still think based off all my testing that probably Purple Luffy is the best leader to take advantage of it. Red Purple Luffy's almost there at times, but we pretty much know the new cards that we get from this deck, but I'll go over it real quick. Big decision points are if we're playing Bond Clay. If you don't have this card, I know this is pretty expensive right now in general. I don't think you need it, but it is a solid card for the deck in general if you can afford it, since we are needing to have like a 4-cost or 5-cost play as well. We have the 5 copies of Queen. We've got the pretty much the solid package for the Straw Hat. So we have 4 copies of the Zoro Juro. We have 4 copies of the Son Goro. We have 4 copies of the Monkey.D.Luffy. And then we also have 3 Onamis and then 4 copies of Usohachi, which again, this card is cracked. It's stupid good. It's probably one of the best, if not the best purple generic 2K we have, probably second if any to Sanji, which we can play both in this deck pretty easy. The fact that it's a 2K, the fact that it's a Straw Hat crew, the fact that we can play it as a blocker later, like these cards are just great. Like these are some of the best 2Ks in the game, and we get it searchable in archetype for this deck, which is really strong. So other than that, our top end is 2 copies of the useless Captain Kidd, 3 copies of the Kaido, 3 copies of the Linlin, which again, I've been liking this card more and more as we've been seeing more of it, and then 3 copies of the Jet Gatling, and then 3 copies of when you're at sea you fight the pirates. So looks top 3 for any Straw Hat Kid pirates or pirates, so you're like almost never gonna miss. I'd be very surprised if you did. Like the cards we can't hit are like the Kaido and Linlin, but most of our key pieces are this. We really want to try to find this on curve as fast as possible, if not 2 copies back to back, and that can really carry games as well. So I don't really have much more to say. I think this deck is in a really good spot, and I'm looking forward to seeing more copies of Luffy in the future and seeing how their builds are as well. But here is the build from Joshua. Next up, we've got Dofi. So this is the build here. This is from Finest. Again, so we had Finest as well as Joshua, or sorry, Finest and Justice having the exact same tiebreakers, so they both got 4th place. And also in top 8, we do have Hunter's version of the deck as well. So I think this is probably one of the biggest talking points for the meta right now, is strictly how good this deck is. It did get 3 copies into the top 8, but it was down to 1 undefeated by the time we got into top 4. I think even maybe top 8. There's only 1 Dofi left. So it's something that I think is, it does have like a really big learning curve and some decision points for how your deck build goes. Some key cards though I will point out is that 1, this card is stupid strong in a lot of ways. The fact that it's a 4/6, it turns your leader into a 6K for free. It sets up your later plays. This is one of the strongest cards in this deck. Obviously, Jinbei is as well. Jinbei is as well. but I do find like the Boa specifically is carrying the deck a little bit more of the cards that do exist. Jozu I think has been pretty solid at 2 copies or more for most builds that I've been seeing, so it's a good ad for helping you get some better tempo. For specifically Finest, the big ad that I saw was this 10-drop Kaido. There's just like some fun plays you get to do with it. You get to get rid of like Moria's, or also you get to get rid of the like Huse's Kid specifically for green. I think that's one of the tougher matchups for us, so to be able to get rid of that card and grind out your value I think is strong for the deck as well. But then we do have the general pieces from there. And then moving over to Justice's build, I'd say a little bit more standard. We do have the Gravity Blade, which before OP08.5 I think Gravity Blade was a staple for this deck, and then I think as we were trying to find more room for our cards for the 7 Warlord package, we find this less and less viable as we go on. So I understand it's seeing a little bit less than that. I also do think that Marshall D. Teach is such a strong card. It wasn't like immediately in my builds when I started testing this format, but the longer I've been seeing it, it's so good. I think the only deck that you fear playing it is probably Lucci, because they can get rid of it pretty easily and one of your other 4 costs. But other than that, there's just so many decks that if you just keep this active, they can't really interact with it very well, and you just get so much consistency and through it that you just it's a very, very strong card in a lot of ways. So we're playing that in all copies of our builds here. And then also we have a Hunter's version of it, and this is just pretty low to the ground. I'd say the most aggressive of the 3. 4 copies of Teach, 2 Femur, and then no copies of like anything. Like the Jozu's our highest cost card now. It does cost 6, but there's just not as much sequencing for, or like there's like no high end, right? If they play like a big body like an 8-drop Kid, this deck would probably suffer about it, but you get like the early aggression too. So I think this deck is in a good spot. Obviously it's going to be interesting to see just how good it is on the main stage, but clearly very strong here, and congratulations to all 3 of our top 8 Dofi players. Next up we've got Nami. So this is the build from John. For a couple of Nami players that I do know, I've been talking about them or what the deck kind of looks like going into 8.5, and most of them are kind of a little bit intimidated due to the fact that that Dofi is so present, and it's really hard to get value and kind of be defensive enough for that deck right now, because they just put out so many 5Ks out. They can mess with your Kaya plays as well, or get rid of your blockers, and it's just really hard to keep up with the amount of aggression that deck can really put out right now. So some key things that I've noticed from this build specifically is that we're only playing 2 copies of Marguerite. We're playing 3 copies of the Boodle, which I would be a little bit worried to play this in the fact that it can get bounced to hand a little bit more easy right now. So it's going to be a little bit harder to get that value. We're also playing 2 copies of the Zeph, and then a good amount of our events, including 1 copy of Brickfist, as well as just like the standard package we've been seeing for a lot of it. 3 copies of Snake Dance, which makes sense when we're playing, I guess, a little bit less copies of Marguerite, and then also the Deathwink, 1 copy of this one. So some more creative ratios I think on some cards, but nothing too wild for what Nami's been looking like. And I do think that it's been downgraded with the current decks that are in the rotation for this meta in general, but I do also think Nami can still top with what the matchup spread looks like in general, and we'll see if that's right or wrong. But this is John's build, and congratulations for their top 8 with Nami. And then one last top 8. This is our only 4-2 to sneak into our top 8 here, but this is Noah's version of Enel, and I made a tier list video last week on my thoughts, and I went down, I put a pinned comment for it too, but I was likely too harsh on my thoughts of Enel. I do think it can do stuff in this meta, but I just haven't seen it, right? It hasn't been around for the last couple of weeks. It hasn't really been topping. I did top this event, but it's a smaller event, and it's an X2 so not to take away from the accomplishment itself, but I like to really know how this does on a mage stage. So I do recognize that we do have such good removal cards right now, and also our removal cards really don't care about like we do have Gadatsu, right? This has been always the card for Enel, but the issue with this card is that it means that we can't be aggressive early, which means that we kind of make up for it later by them having like a high life total. But Gadatsu being then rotated to the Nami, being able to use this to get rid of a 5 or less is super good. It's great in a lot of ways. Being able to use this to make it so we can be aggressive on tempo, and then afterwards we can use this Nami to get rid of a 5 cost still. I think that's a really good trade for this deck in general, and so that helps out a lot. And then our top end, we got 4 copies of 7-drop Enel, 4 copies of the Katakuri, 4 copies of the Yamato, and then 4 copies of the Ace. So a good amount of our top end still, just kind of supplemented by the amount of like early game removal and value we can get from those. So I think Enel can do well. Rob Lucci and I think Smoker are both pretty rough matchups for it. Black Yellow Luffy's about even, and I think you can potentially outstarve like Blue Dofi, but in my opinion, it's closer to like the Red Purple Law matchup with Enel, where you can win if they, you outvalue them and they don't see their Reijus, but at the same time, I think Dofi can be in a really good spot against Enel too. So we'll see what's right, what's wrong. I think that this is still a viable deck, and I didn't mean to say so otherwise, but we'll see what we see in the next couple weeks. So this is a build here from Noah, and congratulations for their top 8 with the Enel. And then finally, we've got our last X2. So these are unique X2 finishes across 3 leaders that could have bubbled into a top 8 for this event. So we got Fee's version of the Lucci, and I do think like Lucci's still really good in a lot of ways. The fact that it does get a better Moria, right? This is still the best deck to take advantage of 8-drop Gecko Moria. We already know the play, we know the combos. I don't have to explain it for this video, but this is a kind of teched out version of the deck in the sense that we are playing like the 6 King pistol as well as the Soap Sheep. This is a really good card for helping get things into range for specifically like a Rob Lucci to get rid of cards from Dofi, or also to be able to get like a weird like Brook, as well as like maybe Who's Who play. So I do like the add of that one. It does also mean we're playing 12 events, which might be a little bit too much if I was to try to sleeve up this deck, but I do respect what it's trying to do and the impact of making it so it's easier for you to remove the cards from a Doflamingo build. So I do think that's great. And then we also have, what else do we have? Just kind of like the general stuff. Jack's still like a big powerhouse for this deck. We don't have like any like alternative top end, so no copies of Isho and no copies of like or like a Kaido. So I could see this build being worse into Black Yellow Luffy specifically because of that, but I still think Rob Lucci's a really solid deck in a lot of ways. So this is Fee's build. Congratulations for their X2 finish. Next up, we've got Vegapunk, and this is quite a peculiar leader in a lot of ways. I could probably make a whole video going over this one. What I'll say for this part though is, one, this is a build from Adam. Ended up going 8-2 with this, and I think this is in response of how present that Dofi is going to be in this meta. If Enel might have an issue outstarving that deck, I think Vegapunk's going to have a really good time at outstarving the Dofi. You just get so much draw and so much recycle. You have so many ways to get rid of 4 costs, including the Monkey.D.Luffy as well as the Nami. Both cards are very strong. And then late game, like Yamato, healing, removing, are also Katakuri. Same kind of idea, that there's just so many good cards for this deck in general that just happen to answer what Doflamingo is trying to do. So we do have the new inclusion of also Bonney from this set. So Dawn ×1, your turn, once per turn. When a card is removed from your opponent's life cards, you get to draw 2 and then trash 1. So that is a +1 in card advantage. And also the trigger off of life is to draw 2 and trash 1. So you get to cycle some cards with that as well. So I think that helps out in a lot of ways. We do have Shaka as like a blocker. Nami again, which we kind of talked about. We have Please Save Me, our weak Quasar. And then also Raigo, our Kingdom Comes, for some late game removal. So I think this is always a deck that I've had a hard time kind of wrapping my head around, but if it does become viable, I wouldn't be too surprised. It would mostly be on the back of being able to potentially have a good matchup into Dofi. But I also think this is a deck that kind of takes advantage of your opponent not really knowing how the deck works. And if this deck becomes a little bit more present, that people respect it a little bit more, I think it might be, it could be a little bit harder to sneak some wins with it too. So I'm curious to see if it can get a W on a higher end. And this is Adam's build for Vegapunk. Congratulations for your X2 finish. And to wrap it up, we've got Bonney. So this is Austin's version of the deck. Bonnie's one of my my favorite decks in this format right now, because I do think it does have a good Dofi matchup, and you do have some ways to creatively build it as well, which is really nice. Some build choices we've seen here. One, we've talked about Carrot on the release of OP08, but doubly so right now against Doflamingo. I think this is a really great card where outside of Jozu, our Gravity Blade, which they're generally not playing 4 copies of either, so they're going to have to kind of see it. This can do some really good work at stunning down some of their 4 drops until it's manageable for you to get rid of them, which is really nice. We also do have the addition of the Krieg, which is a nice little interesting add. So being able to discard a card to get rid of 2, 4 less cards that are rested, really easy for this deck to take advantage of that. So I do think it's a good add for specifically Dofi. And most, like, there's a bunch of other green decks that could take advantage of this card too, like Perona, which I think could be very strong for that deck. We got 3 copies of Basil, and then we also have 3 Hody, 3 copies of the Useless Kid, which can be strong against Dofi as well, and then the 3 Shanks, which this has been just a generically good card from the Film Uta deck, and it's a 9-drop 11k, which is a good value, and then also just being able to KO anything rested is really nice. So we don't get to aggressively rest something, but it's easy for you just to get rid of like a 10 cost, a 9 cost just by playing this, and it's 9 cost too, so you can play this and have 1 Dawn open, which feels really good as well. So and then we also have our Doflamingos. So I think that Bonney's in a good spot right now. I'm curious to see how it does later, but I would expect it to get a lot of tops in this format as well. So this is a build here. Congratulations to Austin for their X2 finish, and that's going to be it for this video. Again, if you guys want any of the deck lists from this event, you can check out my website, Eggman Events, linked in the description, and we'll be continuing to update the website as we get more OP08.5 events in the future as well. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you all next time.